Under the proposed legislation, the program will be renamed to Viksit Bharat Guarantee for Rozgar and Ajivika Mission Gramin. The bill proposes several structural changes to the scheme, beginning with an increase in the guaranteed employment days. The number of assured work days will rise to 125 days from the current 100. The legislation also proposes a significant change to the funding structure, shifting a higher financial burden to the state governments. At present, the centre currently bears 100% of unskilled labour costs and 75% of material costs. Under the new framework, 40% of the total cost will now be borne by all states except northeastern, Himalayan states and J&K. Now, the governments in these regions will also bear 10% of the costs. The bill also seeks to alter the process of budget allocation. The central government will provide a fixed allocation to each state determined by several parameters, including what it defines as a rural area for the state. This marks a shift from the current system where states have the flexibility to propose budgets based on the anticipated demand for work. On Newscentre, we help to decode the implications of these changes on major states. And in fact, joining us now to take this discussion ahead is with us Nikhil Dey, founder and member of Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan and National Campaign for People's Right to Information. He was one of the key architects of the MNREGA. Mr. Dey, thank you so much for taking our time. You've been quite critical of this new bill that has been proposed by the centre. It's called the VB-G Ramji bill is what is being touted as in the parliament and social media. You've been quite critical. Tell us what's the one big change that stands out for you and why you believe that to be a damaging change going forward.
So, frankly, the most basic thing is that it's the end of the right to work or an employment guarantee. It does indeed repeal the MGNREGA and successfully so, in the bill. But what it replaces with is no guarantees of any kind at all. In fact, what you talk about, it's the architecture that allowed MGNREGA to work, which was a nationally, centrally funded scheme across the country that gave a universal entitlement to any rural citizen who wanted to volunteer to do manual work under minimum wages to start off with. That has been replaced, and just 3 sections actually should be understood. Quite rightly, you have said, one is the section where it says that the funding ratio will be now 60:40. The reason MGNREGA ran and all the states accepted it and it ran nationally was because the central government said we will fund the entire labor component, 100%. Section 22 of the MGNREGA has now been replaced with Section 22 of the G-Ramji bill, which says that 60% for most of the country, barring northeastern states and hill states and union territories, the new bill says that 40% of the money will have to come, even for labor component, from the states. Now, there is no reason that the states may want to do this. And in fact, in trying to bring the 60 and 40 together, most parts of the country, the sufferer will be the worker who during every time of economic distress, and those distressed workers who find themselves looking for alternative employment will be unable to get any kind of guarantee. As it is, it's been very difficult because of lack of allocations. This brings me to the second point, which is Section 4(5) of the Act, the new bill. The new bill in Section 4(5) clearly states that the central government will be free. I will actually read it to you. The central government shall determine the state-wise normative allocation for each financial year based on objective parameters that as may be prescribed by the central government. Clearly, now, people demanding law.
Let me just come in on some of the issues that you've highlighted. One is, of course, the 40% burden that the states will have to bear. What I also want to ask is that under MNREGA, there was a very clear provision that provided for additional supplementary grants. It seems under VB G-Ramji bill, there is no provision for additional grants except in cases of disasters. Is that going to impede thus this employment program going forward?
Ashmit, supplementary grants is later. The basic grant, the MGNREGA was our one law that said you are not budget constrained. It is the one law that said as much as demand would be up to 100 days of work per rural household had to be provided by the central government. And even in the Supreme Court, when there were arguments about lack of allocation, the central government would always say, we will provide what you are calling supplementary allocation. We will provide enough allocation for what our guarantee is. That guarantee has disappeared. It is now saying we will decide what allocation, and that's the states will have to make do with that allocation, and the rest they will have to provide. And the next provision in the act under section 4(6) says that it will do it for, though if the state government were to provide any extra money, it would have to do it as per central norms. And section 5(1) of the new law, the new bill, says that the central government is free to decide which parts of the state or which parts of the country it will cover under the scheme.
Right.
It's another
Mr. Dey, just one more question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another key aspect that's been flagged by many on social media has been a restriction of 60 days that has been introduced. Again, a new feature, was not there in MNREGA, is now here in the new bill, which allows states to restrict this work for 60-day period in a year's time. On the face of it, it seems to be a move towards assisting agriculture harvest season as well as the sowing season. Is that the intent and the purpose behind this, or is this going to have maybe consequences in terms of the number of days a job can be claimed by the workers in need?
So, Ashmit, you're on a channel that looks at business issues, it looks at the economy. MGNREGA's most powerful thing was that it provided some bargaining power to people. It provided bargaining power. It did not actually finally give 100 days of work to everyone. But the rural poor who had nowhere else to turn to could say that if you're going to give me exploitative wages, I'll go to MGNREGA. I won't come to your work. And as a result, it played a market role far beyond its own role, where MGNREGA work sites took place. By barring these 60 days, all you're doing is pandering to that lobby, that agricultural sector lobby. In most parts of the country, NREGA does not run in agricultural season, very little. But it runs as an entitlement that if you find you are not able to get sufficient wages as an agricultural worker, you will say, I'll go to NREGA. So it provides a kind of a equivalent of a minimum support price for agricultural labor, for their labor. So yes, it will have a terrible effect. This will actually play into the hands of contractors because NREGA's work guarantee is gone. It will play into the hands of big farmers because agricultural labor will be available to them and a feudal structure. And it will really undermine any idea that the central government even has of its scheme, because the 60-40 ratio, it's very unlikely that the states will play along.
Right, Mr. Dey.
So even the scheme will fail. Thank you.
Right, Mr. Dey, you're clearly not happy with it, but you've shared a lot of interesting insights as to operational issues that could be faced going forward. And we'd like to thank you for joining us. But on that note, let's also go across to CPIM Rajya Sabha MP John Brittas. He's joining us live. Mr. Brittas, thank you so much for taking out time. I went through some of the criticisms that you've put forth on social media, Mr. Brittas. One of the key issues that you raised is that states, but they're taking 100% of the credit for this employment scheme going forward. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that is precisely how this government of India has rechristened this scheme. When Mahatma Gandhi has gone and Ram has been brought in, actually the soul of the scheme has been drained out. And see, now what they have done is that this has been turned into a normal centrally sponsored scheme instead of a guarantee scheme, a pilot scheme. So assuming that you have a allocation of, say, 1,20,000 crore, that means almost 50,000 crores of burden is on these state governments. I understand even a small state like Kerala will have to shell out something like 2,000 to 2,500 crore. It simply means that the states which are starved of funds, which don't have the resources, are being asked to implement it, but the credit goes to the central government. So a scheme which was supposed to be to give sustenance and dignity to the population, rural people who are in distress, that has been completely tweaked. And at the end of the day, there is a sad demise of a scheme which used to be there as a shining beacon for a lot of people, crores and crores of people.
Right.
And further, there are other nuances which are attached to it. And I could hear, somebody's talking
Speaking
about
of those
the
further nuances, Mr. Brittas, let me come in on some of the issues that you've raised. Let's first understand, I'm just borrowing from some of the criticisms that Mr. Dey had shared. I want to put that across to you. He said that if 40% of the burden rests on states, and if states like Kerala are unable to cough up that amount of money, you've squared that down to about 2,000 to 2,500 crore rupees annual burden that Kerala is looking at. If the state is not able to cough up that money, then what happens to this employment guarantee scheme to the workers on the ground?
Now, it is no longer a guarantee scheme. That thing has been taken out of this scheme altogether. That's what I said, that it has been converted to a normally centrally sponsored scheme. What was the soul of the scheme? Anyone who wants to, it's a right. There is a right for him. It's a guarantee for him that he should be getting the employment. Now they're pegging at an amount. That means within the amount, within the budget of the state government and the central government, you need to give the employment. Once that is exhausted, you won't get the jobs. So for the guarantee, it's going down. That's what I'm saying. And second thing is that,
Sure.
do you think the state governments would be in a position to shell out this much of resources to make sure that the scheme is moving? No, because already other schemes are in distress. There are something like 81 centrally sponsored schemes. Most of these schemes suffer paralysis because of the lack of resources. So this scheme also is subjected to such a paralysis.
Just one final question to you. Just one final question to you, Mr. Brittas. We're running out of time, so I'll just put across one question to you. In terms of operationalizing this entire employment guarantee scheme, one of the concerns that has also been raised is the panchayat system being weakened. The criticism is that because there's a centralized approach in this new law, it will render the panchayats powerless in terms of execution of the works at hand. Is that your approach, your observation as well, or do you think some of these concerns may have been overstated?
No. Exactly. That's what's going to happen. I have been always airing my apprehension with regard to the centralization that is happening now. Everything needs to be run from Delhi alone. Such a vast country with rich diversities, if you don't take state governments and also local body governments, how are you going to implement a scheme of such magnitude? I feel that the scheme has been virtually sent to the gallows. It's going to be drained out. I feel that the government should have said that we don't have an obligation to run this scheme because the scheme came as part of the UPA 1 or whatever may be that. So instead of that, they have brought in Ram. And everything is happening in the name of Ram. I think they should not be that uncharitable to Ram, I am telling you.
Right, Mr. Brittas, I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank Mr. Nikhil Dey as well for joining us, for sharing their perspective. Very ominous words, though, in terms of what this means for employment guarantee on the ground. I'd like to thank both of our panelists for joining us. With that, let's slip into a very short break, but we continue this discussion on the other side. Well, welcome back. We're continuing our conversation on the latest bill that is seen to replace the MNREGA. It's called the VB-G-RAM-G bill. And helping us now to understand what the implications could be is with us the Congress spokesperson, Sujata Paul. She's joining us live. Ms. Paul, thank you so much for joining us. We're, of course, a finance network. We're trying to look at it from what the financial implications could be. Mr. Brittas was with us. He's given us ominous figures in terms of 50,000 crore rupees, he said, is the burden that the states will have to shoulder. What I want to ask you is that the Finance Commission was not very far away. Yet a burden such as this now being cast on the state governments, do you have any concerns that the government may have been possibly preempting the recommendations of the Finance Commission?
Clearly, there are a whole lot of issues as far as renaming this is concerned, because this is more to do with political symbolism rather than practicality. Because Mahatma Gandhi's name, brings to your mind immense respect, and immediately the national conscience kind of reinforces the fact that this has to be an inclusive scheme. This will be something which will bring equity. And therefore, when you talk about the new name, clearly every rupee spent on it itself is going into the renaming of it rather than correcting the problems which exist, like timely payments, etc. However, having said that, there will be a lot of public confusion and accessibility also, because all those people, and especially in the last 2 decades since this program was brought in, there have been rural workers from diverse conditions, in the sense that across the country, people have been looking up to this particular scheme as something which is a guarantee for them. However, do you think that yes. Yes. So
Ms. Paul, I just want to ask you, I just want to get a sense that while you criticize this bill, the headline numbers do support the idea that 100 to 125 days, the number of work days is actually increasing under this new bill.
But tell me something, if you are pushing the burden onto the states for 40%, earlier it was 90-10. Now, if it is going to be 40%, 100% in fact earlier, and now for the northeastern states, it's 90-10, and for the rest of the states, it's 60-40, with the burden being on the states as well. Do you think that poor states are going to face no problems when they have to bear this extra burden? And when you wanted everything to be centralized, you should have made sure that you were pumping in more funds into the scheme, which gives guarantee and which has given guarantee. You saw what happened in the pandemic. During the pandemic, people knew that they had 100 days of guaranteed rural labor. And now, should the government not have thought about, bettering the scheme? Now, all that money gone into paying the workers going to be diverted into advertising. Yes, and changing everything.
Ms. Paul, bettering the scheme is what the government says it is doing by introducing measures like bringing in more observation and audit mechanisms to ensure that the work that is being done, the money that is being spent, is actually visible on the ground. One of the biggest criticisms of the MNREGA was that there is work being done on paper but not on the ground, and therefore the need felt for a new bill, for a new audit mechanism, for new oversight mechanisms on the existing provisions.
Ashmit, tell me, where is the problem in correcting these issues? They could have done it in these issues rather than wasting so much of money, and there will be a lot of paperwork which will be required. Office renaming of, in books, in brochures, everything will require money, right? That money could have been used to make sure that this was better. However, when you talk about, the fiscal aspect of it, don't you think that the fiscal burden being shifted onto the states is going to be a matter of concern for all the state governments? Maybe the BJP ruled states will not say a word, but there is no fiscal choice given to the rest of the states as well. They will want that this should be taken up by the center, and that way this scheme could have still remained centralized. But what you're saying, and there is so much of confusion in this itself, that you are renaming a scheme to better it. How can you better a scheme when you don't have the vision to better an existing scheme? So clearly, it is not about bettering the scheme.
We're completely out of time, Ms. Paul. I'll just ask.
During the UPA era.
Ms. Paul, we're completely out of time, but I'll just come to you for a quick 30 seconds for a final comment. We've seen in the past opposition ruled states approaching the apex court, Supreme Court, when they feel there was a move that was unconstitutional. Take, for example, governors sitting on bills being passed by state assemblies. The question that I now want to ask is, when you're looking at, as per Mr. Brittas, the opposition states, the states overall are looking at a burden of 50,000 crore rupees. Is this a fit case for opposition parties like you, considering moving the courts if this bill is passed, challenging the constitutionality of it?
Let us come to the bill first. Let's see how it goes and what the opposition plans to do. If the government has any sense, they will take the opposition on board. Because, you know, there is one more issue that you must talk about. When there is an unexpected reason, then then the MNREGA scheme has always helped that. Whereas that aspect also, I believe, I haven't read the bill, so I can't, the draft also, so I cannot for sure say that. But what I found is that if there is some sudden need for MNREGA kind of scheme to come in, then that additional spike will not be able to work, because according to me, it will be the center which will refuse to bear the burden, and the states will not be able to fund it, right?
Right, Ms. Paul. Thank you so much for joining us, for sharing your insight. Clearly, a fierce debate is what awaits us, is what Ms. Paul is telling us on the way ahead as we look at this VBG Ram G bill. We'd like to thank all of our panelists for sharing insights. But this is clearly an issue that is up for a debate. It is yet to be tabled in the Parliament. We're yet to see how the Parliament chooses to respond to this latest bill seeking to replace the MGNREGA bill. But that's all the time that we have. It's a wrap on this edition of News Centre. More news and updates will continue right here.